President Cyril Ramaphosa will close the ANC Veterans League conference a bit later today. The prohibition on the sale of alcohol after midnight in Limpopo is set to come into effect on Tuesday. Now, this is despite a pending court challenge. Parliament's Section 194 committee meets to continue work on its draft report into the fitness to hold office of suspended public protector Busiwe Mkhwebane. Good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you for tuning in. You're watching The Week Ahead. You can interact with us on our social media platforms. It's at Week Ahead. Our hashtag is The Week Ahead, and I'm your host, Mfundo Mamalani. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa will close the ANC Veterans League conference a bit later today. The conference has re-elected Dr. Snooky Zigalala and Dr. Mavuso Msimang as President and Deputy President, respectively.
Comrade Snooky Zigalala.
The second day of the ANC Veterans League's national conference, and already things are going as planned. The ANC elders have thrown their weight behind Dr. Snooky Zigalala to lead them. Zigalala was re-elected to the position of president of the structure unopposed.
Yeah, give him a mic.
Thank you very much. I do accept.
Thank you.
He was nominated for the position against three other opponents who then declined their nominations. Amongst them, ANC veteran Dr. Mavuso Msimang. Msimang has opted for the position of deputy president of the structure.
Comrade Mavuso Msimang remains the sole nominee for position of deputy president.
Former Human Settlement Minister Connie September is now the new Deputy Secretary General of the League.
For position of Deputy Secretary General, we remain with Comrade Connie September.
As the conference continues with its work, Motlanthe commended the over 500 delegates for participating in the conference.
They shouldn't vote in ANC conferences because they should be above, the tussles within the ANC structures. And he said even the National Executive Committee expects of them that when they miss a step, these veterans will be able to call them out and correct them. So that's the role. They have a huge role to play inside the ANC.
ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to give the closing remarks on the last day of the conference. Ntlantla Khatlane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, now for more on this, we're joined by Ntlantla Khatlane, SABC News reporter. Ntlantla, good afternoon. So quite a lot coming out of the conference thus far. We know the newly elected president, who was elected unopposed, Dr. Zigalala, is one individual who hasn't shied away from expressing his position on coalitions. Just give us a summation of the conference thus far.
Well, a very good day to you, Mfundo. Well, indeed, the conference today, it's finalizing what it came here for. For the last 3 days, it has been doing its work with ANC elderly, here gathered here to elect the new leadership. As we spoke earlier, we did mention that today there were only two ballot papers of the Secretary General and the Treasurer. We already know those results, but one thing that came out from this conference, especially today, is what happened with regards to also the nominations of NEC members, where we saw that all provinces were represented, but with me here I'm with Deputy President of the Veterans League, Dr. Mavuso Msimang, who's just going to talk to us with regards to this conference and the work that has been done. Thank you so much, Dr. Msimang. One thing that one has noticed today is the issue around you as elders of the ANC leading by example. with regards to taking time, and ensure that each and every province is represented here. Just talk to us with regards to you guys as the new leadership, and we know that, ANC has been divided, and there's this perception that the winners would bring their own people. Is this what you guys would want to see happen in the mother body?
Well, we would like to see ourselves, thanks very much for your observations, quite cogent. The Veterans League, which really has no legal authority to tell anybody in the ANC what to do, nevertheless represents the history and the experiences, and I would like to think also the ethics of the African National Congress. You refer to the issue where all the provinces had already nominated and had approved members to the NEC of the Veterans League. Somebody rises from the floor and says, wait a minute, we ought to ensure that there is proper geographic spread in our organization, that there is gender parity, that the issue of the national question, we're South Africans all, whether we happen to be Indian or white or what have you. These are all issues that are important for the Veterans League to reflect. So what they did was to go and sit together, caucus, and they agreed that they will elect they will recommend for conference to accept a number of people to the National Executive Committee who reflect these principles and values of the ANC. What happened then was that some of the people had to retreat to make way for this thing. But I want to stress that they also added that in addition to this South African nature of the ANC, all-embracing, capacity to do work that needs to be done, and competence and commitment. Those were the ingredients that led to the acceptance by conference of the people who were proposed by the provinces.
Another question that I have for you is the issue on, a lot was said with regards to the role of the elders, the veterans, the SG conceding there, without you guys, ANC is as good as dead. What are you guys, as the new leadership, going to do to ensure that the suggestion, the advice that you guys would be giving, because you also be looking at things, that it doesn't fall on deaf ears? I mean, you guys raise issue, but implementation and taking action seems to be a challenge whereby, you feel like, yes, we've raised it, but nothing is done.
One can only hope for the best. I said a little earlier that we do not have any constitutional authority to force people to do the right thing that reflects ANC values. But the hope really is that the respect that we may have earned, the respect of being in the organization for more than 40 years, to have lived for the time that we have lived, would be taken on board. But our advice will be as good as the ethical acceptance of the people who are in leadership, their willingness. For instance, we talk about renewal. We are saying we are all for it and it has to happen, but you cannot renew with people who are not committed to the values and principles of the organization. So if it requires a firm decision to say your behavior to date, you appear in these zondo things and so on, does not convince us that you would be part of the renewal unless you make a serious commitment, it is accepted by the membership, then those things must happen. The renewal will not happen if you've got crazy people as part of the renewal process.
A last question for me, in a nutshell, are you happy? I mean, the last time we spoke, you registered your unhappiness with the status of the ANC. To date, are you happy with regards to the path that the ANC is taking?
No, not yet. There are serious challenges. I mean, people these days are talking about coalitions. Oh my God. And there we have a position, by the way, on coalitions, which was adopted by the ANC, which we are putting forward. No, the ANC must work hard to earn the respect of the people again. I would be lying if I said we are in the straight and narrow. I mean, every other week you're hearing about scandals and so on and so forth. We need to engage. We will engage with the organization. We will advise, that's the best we can do, on how best we can renew. No, I think we would like to encourage the ANC to take firm positions that will earn them the respect that they have lost so much that when we talk about elections, we are considering coalitions.
Well, thank you so much. Fundo, that was the Deputy President of the Veterans League there, not shying away from the issues of coalitions. Last week, if you remember, when they held a press briefing about the state of readiness of this conference, they did mention that, it was quite early to start speaking about coalitions. The ANC should be focusing on winning the election and also registering that they wouldn't like to see the ANC working with the third largest party in parliament, which is the EFF, saying that, they are totally against it with regards to that. And also what we know, Fundo, is that the president of the party, Cyril Ramaphosa, is expected to give the closing remarks in around 2 o'clock. Now we know that the veterans have adjourned for lunch to just make way for the president to come in. But we know that after an hour or in a couple of minutes, the president will take podium, and engage the Veterans League after this conference. Mfundo?
Interview there with Dr. Mavuso, particularly the part where he's frank and honest about their powers as well as their limitations, that they have no authority over members of the party, but theirs will be a role to advise or nudge them in the right direction. Very informative. Thank you very much, colleague. That's Nhlanhla Kgatlana, who was in conversation there with Dr. Mavuso Msimang, who is the newly elected Deputy President of the League. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the prohibition on the sale of alcohol after midnight in Limpopo is set to come into effect on Tuesday. Now, this is despite a pending court challenge. The National Liquor Traders Association has launched an urgent application to interdict the implementation of the Limpopo Liquor Act of 2009. Now, the application is expected to be heard at the High Court in Polokwane on the 8th of next month.
The gloves are off. And this High Court in Polokwane is expected to be the battleground. The National Liquor Traders Association wants to interdict the implementation of the Limpopo Liquor Act of 2009. The act moves the cut-off time for the sale of alcohol from 2 a.m. to 12 midnight. Liquor traders believe this will lead to a loss of income and jobs.
It is rather unfortunate that we have to resort to court processes to resolve an issue that could have been handled differently, only if the government of Limpopo cared about liquor traders, instead of peddling half-truths to try and defend an issue that seeks to destroy the livelihoods of liquor traders and the value chain. It is therefore our expectation that as this matter is before the courts, the Limpopo Economic, Environment and Tourism Department will accordingly show good faith and suspend the act in its entirety, pending the finalization of this case. This is the least we expect from the department.
The Limpopo government is ready to defend the act.
If they go to court, then also we have the responsibility to defend, because we don't have the responsibility, as the M is responsible for economic development, to stop the implementation thereof, because it's gazetted.
Patrons at this liquor outlet at Harampuru outside Polokwane expressed mixed views on the implementation of the act.
And I think it's a good thing because some of us are students and it's hard to read when they're allowed to know it says outside.
Munama says a task team has been formed to find common ground with affected stakeholders. Biman Baloi, SABC News, Polokwane.
The National Consumer Commission has raised concerns about the high prevalence of non-compliant imported goods flooding the country in the clothing and textile industry. The Commission recently won an appeal case against Scoop Clothing after the National Consumer Tribunal had ruled in favor of Scoop to set aside a compliance notice issued by the NCC. The High Court confirmed that the Commission was within its right to exercise the power bestowed on it by the Consumer Protection Act.
The National Consumer Commission conducts raids at points of entry on imported goods that do not comply with the regulations, such as proper labeling, on a weekly basis. And it has issued about 59 compliance notices in the last financial year, ending in March this year. In terms of the regulations, all clothing and textiles need to comply with the labeling requirements. The textile industry, as well as consumers, relies on labels for the item's country of origin. Different tariffs are applied to imported products that are completed and those that are not finished. And non-labeling of goods is detrimental to competition and consumer choice.
The local industry has to comply when they actually manufacture in the country. They have to comply with this regulation to make sure that they label, and it also talks to the issue of costs for the local industry. So when goods are actually imported and then they're labeled here, it actually brings in the issue of competition in that regard, because then it costs more for local manufacturers to be able to comply if we then allow for importers of these goods to then import them maybe at a lower price from other countries.
The Commission has accused several retail outlets in the country of selling imported merchandise with misleading labels. The law requires imported merchandise to have permanent labels stating the country of origin and whether it is being printed or finished in South Africa. The NCC says there shouldn't be a situation where clothing from other countries is labeled in South Africa, and that there's also been instances where imported clothing had been labeled as manufactured in South Africa.
We need to make sure that we do not break the value chain from production of textile and clothing, and also make sure that when they are imported, because if you are importing a particular piece of clothing, you need to make sure that it is complete with all the labeling, especially around the issue of country of origin. So, for example, we also do not want to have a situation where clothing is imported into the country and it's labeled made in South Africa when in fact it was made somewhere else.
The Commission spends millions of rands to do inspections on a regular basis, and it has called on importers to comply with the regulations set by the South African Bureau of Standards on how goods must be labelled. Naledi Matlapeng, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Retailers say shoplifting is getting worse, with shops ramping up their security to reduce losses from the crime. The Consumer Goods Council, representing retail and manufacturing member companies, says it's been meeting with police top brass for intervention following concerns raised by the sector. Thieves are targeting big and small stores, stealing food, clothes, alcohol and working tools. Katlego Lekhodi reports.
Criminal activity targeting retail stores is on the increase, with organized syndicates stealing high-value items. The Consumer Goods Council says it's been inundated with calls for intervention to help safeguard this sector.
There's the random, and you find people being hungry and stealing something or just needing a loaf of bread or whatever. But then there's the organized part. We did find that there are organized groups who target specific products. Baby formula was one of those products. Baby diapers was one of those products. Cheese was at one stage one of those products where syndicates would move from in a town, in a specific town. They would go into a ShopRite and they would steal. And then a few hours later, they would go into the Spar and they would steal, but they would steal a similar product.
Businesses are investing more in their security due to heightened risks of shoplifting. One of them is businessman Jose Teixeira. He tells us that they've been operating for 8 years now and are constantly counting losses from crime and have now had to put extraordinary measures in place to safeguard the business.
2 alarms in case one fails. A security guard at night also got in the place just to make sure there's a warning before anything gets broken into. And plenty other things, like for example, I got security walking around the store just to keep the shop lefty at bay. We had to do a lot of moves here. A lot of the stocks that normally disappear, things like cable, diamond discs, and we had to put it behind counter. Whereas we physically had syndicates coming into the store. Oh, you're talking about camera systems, say 200,000 for 2 extra camera systems. 2 alarms, another 200,000. The extra security guards at night, 30,000 rand.
Workers are also worried as they often get blamed when products go missing. Job security is another concern.
I feel so bad sometimes. I feel like sometimes one day I can lose my job because of the business also. I once experienced it. One day I found one customer try to steal the chisels, the expensive chisels. So in some cases it's going to affect us as employees because they thought it's us we steal sometimes, but it's not us, it's the shoplifters. It affects also our jobs.
Concerns have been raised on the impact of these crimes on the economy, prompting high-level meetings with the police and those in the sector.
All these issues have been raised over time to the relevant authorities, and we've been working very closely. I myself personally, for example, yesterday just returned from KwaZulu-Natal, where I had an engagement with the Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Services, General Mkwanazi. We had a very fruitful engagement. We agreed on strategy moving forward. Truth be told, the industry is suffering major losses, and you'll see it. A lot of the retailers have closed down a lot of their operations. You can look at the Massmart Group that closed down a couple of its operations, and this is all due to the fact that the losses that are being suffered due to all of these different crime threats.
Some are urging government to come up with policies that will see the economy thrive and the socio-economic challenges addressed. Security experts say crime is slowly getting out of control.
Due to the bad situation in South Africa, the economic problems, there has been an increase of all kinds of crime, especially theft. So you would have even housewives try and steal goods out of shops. You will have businessmen trying to get more and take from in illegal ways from other companies. So in all kinds of thefts, we have seen an increase, especially the poorest of the poor. We've always said before, if the economy is as bad as it is and getting worse due to load shedding and due to other problems in our country, which is, for instance, the increase of all kinds of crime, government corruption, etc., it really moves people where they actually have no other option as to feed themselves by stealing and selling.
Communities have also been urged to work with the retail sector to root out crime, as the millions of rands lost from the activity have a direct impact on the economy, the integrity of the sector and jobs prospects. Katlago Logodi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, now joining us for a discussion on the prohibition on the sale of alcohol after midnight in Limpopo that is set to come into effect on Tuesday is Silo Mokwana. He's the Deputy Chairperson of the Sekhukhune Liquor Traders Association. Mr. Mokwana, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. So the ban on the sale of liquor after midnight comes into effect essentially this Tuesday. We understand you met with the MEC, Mr. Rogers Monama, this week. What were the outcomes of that engagement?
Good afternoon, Mfundo, and good afternoon to your viewers. Based on the meeting which we had on the 24th of July 2023 with the Rogers Monama and the HOD and some senior members from the departments, we went into that meeting in good collaboration of spirit that since hence Roger Monama has got the executive powers, he'll amend it in terms of the in favor of small businesses in Limpopo. But we went into that meeting in good faith of spirit, and then it clearly indicated to us that we should wait for a media response which will be responding us up until on the 27th of July 2023. So disappointing us again based on the fact that he's not a man of integrity and an honorable man, and he doesn't have any constituency. He didn't respond to us. So that's why we had no choice but to instruct our legal team to place the matter under the High Court of Polokwane.
All right, and we understand that matter will be heard on the 8th of August. What exactly are the orders that you're seeking there?
Our orders are exactly clear and straight to the point. We just want the suspension of the regulations. We truly indicated through the past days we come from that we don't have a problem with the implementation of the new Liquor Act, but in terms of the regulations, it will work in a disadvantage for the whole businesses in large, for the community as a whole.
So you want, I just want clarity on this, you want it suspended, the implementation thereof, perhaps for another process to take place where there is some sort of consultation yet again, or what exactly are you seeking?
Yeah, as we've also indicated, that we also want a constitutional review on this matter because we feel that our responding the previous participation which was done has been ignored, and that in a sense of saying that it must be reviewed through the whole airport community process.
But the MEC has stressed on several platforms that this decision was arrived at by following the conventional process of consultation through public hearings. Was it that perhaps some of your members didn't participate?
Our members, partly most of the members have participated, and based on the facts that we have been raising, it's that we've even touched it based on the public participation. Hence, we think that the matter now is in the court, and then based on the evidence that we have, we hope that the court will grant will judge in our favor because we don't want to see businesses being suffering. As you know, that he has indicated and shown that the Limpopo government and his department cannot be trusted. They have clearly shown that they do undermine small businesses in large in the community.
Now, we understand that the increase in liquor fees is among some of your concerns. It's moved from 100 Rand to 750 per annum. Government, of course, believes it's reasonable since they've also stressed that the increase is an increase since 30 years. There hasn't been one. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, we stand the vision that because of it's going to affect our members based on the fact of that we still have social economic issues, and then based on that, they were incompetent over the years. They couldn't apply the increase. So the high people acceptable in the sense of that it shouldn't be 650%. So they didn't do their work properly.
All right. So you're saying at the very least, perhaps now they could increase it by 50 Rand or 100 Rand, not that 750, which speaks to their own inaptitude or inability to keep their house in order and perhaps increase it gradually per annum.
Yeah, actually, we would be more than happy if they could just revisit, even if they had to go to 15 Rand to 20 Rand, would be willing to accept it.
All right. Mr. Mukwana, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is Mr. Mukwana, Silo Mukwana, Deputy Chairperson of the Sekhukhune Liquor Traders Association, speaking to us. To this story now, City Power in Johannesburg wants residents to foot the bill for service cables stolen from their properties. The Bar Utility says it's incurred a nearly 200 million Rand bill for replacing service cables, stolen essential equipment and infrastructure such as mini substations in the past financial year.
It's a regular sight in many parts of the city. Some households connecting cables illegally to access electricity. It's led to upstanding residents getting fed up.
This transformer behavior, it does not have enough capacity to take on everybody. And the worst thing ever, if we do have a problem, like one of the things that we do face here, the electrical, what do you call this? Bridging. Yes, oh my goodness, that's the worst thing ever. And even our cables, they got stolen. I mean, you could just hear somebody in the middle of the night going right on top of your house, cutting up the cable.
They want City Power to improve services, as the transformers currently in the area simply don't have the capacity to provide electricity to the entire region, which often leads to cables being stolen or overburdened transformers blowing up.
When you go to City Power, the City Power, they can say they can come and fix it, but they can take 2 or 3 weeks, they didn't come, and we're not happy about that. Which means the City Power, they're failing us here at Freedom Park. They're failing us too much. And then even that at the Mountain View, they connect here. So that's why this transformer is too small for us.
City Power says it's under increasing pressure to replace stolen service cables free of charge, and it's spent millions of rands doing just that. These are the cables that run from the pole box beyond the perimeter wall of the house to residents' homes. So, to cut down on costs, it wants residents to foot that bill.
We bring electricity to your outside your yard, and from your yard to the distribution box, whether it's in the kitchen or it's in the garage. That cable belongs to the customer, and should it be lost, you basically have to pay for it. We are doing this because we've also seen an increase in the theft of those cables in most of the non-affluent areas, whereby those cables are being stolen and then they are used for electrification or to steal electricity in the illegal connections in some of the informal settlements. But also we have been losing a lot of money replacing these cables on behalf of the customers. We have basically spent about 200 million rands in the last financial year.
The power utility has defended its move and says it's simply enforcing an existing bylaw. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.
All right, more news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, Parliament's Section 194 committee that's looking into the fitness to hold office of suspended Public Protector Busiwe Mkhwebane is working towards finalizing its report early next week. It's been established over a year ago. The motion for this committee to be established was tabled by the Democratic Alliance, citing several negative court findings against Mkhwebane. Her term of office comes to an end on the 15th of October. The committee has been characterized by many delays, including 2 recusal applications for the chairperson, that's Kubutile Janji, as well as court challenges against the parliamentary process. In a rare meeting of a committee today, MPs are trying to finalize that report. The revival of art in Bombela and Mpumalanga is in full swing. Young minds are leading and shaping the movement to keep budding artists off the streets.
Artists in training, learning and exploring an array of art techniques, from printmaking and painting to drawing. It's all about mastering composition, light and shadows, and means of expression like no other.
I genuinely liked art, and it's something that helped me get through tough times, like you know how it is in high school and all the bullying and teasing. So I just like taking it all out when I'm drawing or painting.
I enjoy doing art, and it's also expressive. It shows what you love doing. I love painting, coloring, and also sketching, and I love landscaping.
Bob Mnisi is a renowned artist, now sharing his talent and shaping young minds.
I decided I can do this with the paintings that I was sponsored before. I said, no, I've got this, I cannot keep them for myself, but I can also give ideas. Being an artist and being a creative person, I thought, it's a good way of giving back to the community. Art, they say you start teaching someone at a tender age, where he's versatile or she's versatile, where their brains are still active to do anything.
Thus, to revive the art industry, and in particular, Mbombela Art Gallery. Now walls outside are teeming with murals, where artists are expressing themselves. and their backgrounds.
And after we spoke to the municipality, they told us that there is actually an art gallery in Mbombela. And when we got to see it and the condition it was in, it was very heartbreaking for a lot of artists that are involved in this project. And we felt the first thing we need to do is revive it and to make sure that there is a proper launch that will expose young people who are doing different art projects in schools, who are showcasing in festivals and so on, to actually come and have their art here. And just to open the route for people to come in and get to view the art. So the municipality then let us in to show us that this is not a space that they are familiar with, and we can actually take over and see what we can do. And we've come up with very brilliant ideas of getting the children in to be the ones that tell us what can showcase their type of art in the city.
And their talent is undeniable. They will be painting a mural at a local airport soon. Dumela Machogo, SABC News, Mbombela.
All right, let's shift our focus to this story now. A car has overturned on the busy M4 freeway in Gqeberha. That's after heavy rains fell last night and this morning. The department in Gqeberha says most areas in the area have experienced over 45 milliliters of rain, and this rain has fallen into the Langkloof area, a great catchment area that flows into the dams. The heavy rains and cold front is expected to continue tomorrow. Our reporter Lerato Fekisi has more.
A very good morning. We are broadcasting from Gqeberha, where we have heard that about 45 millimeters of rain have fallen in the Langkloof area over the past 24 hours. The temperature is 11 degrees and truly a cold front has come. I just want to show you how bad the cold front has been. The 45 millimeters of rain have been good because you know we are currently facing a drought. But as you can see behind me here on one of the busy main roads of Gqeberha, a car has overturned primarily because of the area that you see that is quite flooded. We have heard from authorities that it was caused by someone who was obviously speeding in this area, and the car capsized, and the driver luckily has survived and is currently in hospitals with just minor injuries. Residents here have been cautioned to really take it easy on the roads because they are wet, it is cold, and the weather is expected to fall this way until about Wednesday. So as you see behind me is a car that has overturned, capsized, is now upside down, and it is currently being pulled by road officials off the road. And the main road, which is one of the busiest routes here in Gqeberha, has been closed off to make sure that residents don't also fall trapped to this area. Like I said earlier on, we spoke to the municipality saying that they are aware that this rain is going to fall for a couple of days, and have cautioned residents to really make sure they really drive within the expected kilometers in their road, and make sure also that they also drive cautiously to avoid such things from happening. But speaking to God Sampson this morning from the weather services, he did say that the heavy rainfall is much needed. Also what's key is that it has fallen in the catchment areas in the Langkloof, which is key for the metro, like as was said, that we're currently facing a drought, and this water will then flow through to the dams, which are currently sitting at about 14% and even more combined. So we are here now, as you can see behind me, the authorities are trying to take the car off. It fell in the early hours of this morning, said about 1 a.m. and we have heard that a driver was driving on this road, obviously speeding, and didn't see the floods here. But we have heard that luckily the driver did survive and is currently in hospital with minor injuries. So the residents in Gqeberha have been cautioned. It is raining, it is wet, it is cold. Expected rain to carry on up until Wednesday, but have been asked to make sure that they drive cautiously, especially on the main roads where there are currently certain areas that are currently flooded due to the heavy rains. But for now, let's go back to the studio.
Welcome back. So South Africans have until the 4th of August to offer public comment and make submissions to the Portfolio Committee on Health. That's on the Tobacco Products and Electronic Delivery Systems Control Bill. Parliament says the bill is designed to protect the health of all South Africans. It seeks to strengthen public health protection measures, align South African tobacco control law with the World Health Organization Framework Convention, and to repeal the current existing Tobacco Control Act of 1993. Now, to discuss this is Dr. Catherine Egbe. She's a specialist scientist in the Alcohol, Tobacco and Other Drug Research Unit of the South African Medical Research Council. Doctor, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. So the 4th of August is the last day for submissions. We know that when it comes to you, you have been among those advocating for this bill, maintaining that a sick nation is a poorer nation because as it stands, we lose around, I think, 42 billion per year treating illness and dealing with loss of productivity. So just for the benefit of those who might still not be au fait with the salient aspects of this bill, just talk us through it.
Thank you very much, Fundo, and good afternoon to the listeners. So the bill seeks to, the change actually between this bill and what we currently have, the Tobacco Control Act, in 5 measures. The first one is indoor smoke-free places. So the current law allows you to put 25% or to have 25% of the floor areas of some indoor public places to be made the smoking areas. So, for example, if you may see that in some restaurants, even now, but many restaurants have even voluntarily chosen to go completely smoke-free. So this current law will now remove that 25% provision for smoking areas so that the whole area can be, all indoor public places can be smoke-free. Now, the essence of this is to protect non-smokers who we have seen from research that they are as well affected by tobacco smoke if they are exposed to the tobacco smoke of other people who are smoking. So about about 7 million people die of tobacco-related diseases, but about 1 million plus of these people do not even smoke. So they are exposed to other people's smoke. So that's what this law is going to do. The second one is to ban the sale of cigarettes through vending machines. We know that currently the law allows you to put these vending machines in bars where where you have the smoking areas, but there's no provision for example, of how you would know if a minor is trying to access the vending machine. This law will now remove that, so that there is no sale of cigarettes through vending machines. So the other provisions, I'll just run quickly through the rest 3, and then if you have more questions, you can ask. The other one is to put in place plain packaging or standardized packaging of tobacco products, so that you don't have these fancy, like you're seeing on the screen now, these fancy packages. They would be in one standardized packaging, but still having the names of the products on the product, and then it will come with graphic health warnings showing pictures of diseases that can be caused by smoking, so that to encourage smokers to quit and discourage young people from initiating smoking.
Can I interject just there, Doctor? Apologies.
Yes,
just
please.
With that one.
Okay.
What informed this particular decision around perhaps the more plain packaging and the more pictorial warnings that we want to see, these visible warnings? Would it really deter smokers or would-be smokers from purchasing a pack of cigarettes?
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, there are two main reasons why that law is being put in place. The first one is to educate smokers. Not all smokers can read. So what we have today is the textual health warning. But South Africa signed the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, and the treaty is an international treaty. It obligates parties to do certain things to protect the population from the harms of tobacco products. And what is expected is to have at least 30% of the area of the minimum 30% of the area of your package to be having warnings that should educate smokers and indeed, of course, non-smokers, especially children, about the harms of these products. But South Africa doesn't even have up to that 30%. And the WHO encourages countries to include graphic health warnings. Now, as a party to that treaty, it means that South Africa is obligated to up their game, kind of, so that they can be at par with other countries. There are many countries in Africa that already have graphic health warnings. There are many countries around the world that are already putting in place, standardized packaging, including the United Kingdom. And what has been found in research is that this has helped to deter young people from initiating smoking and to encourage smokers to quit.
All right. Now, when perusing through this bill, it seems to have a tone that seeks to elevate the rights of vulnerable groups, particularly children, where it talks about prohibiting smoking in cars where there are children under the age of 18 or smoking in private dwellings used for commercial childcare. Can you unpack this part for us?
So I first of all would like to make the listeners to understand that most people who smoke today, the majority of those who smoke today, about 80% of them started smoking when they were teenagers. And you know that the law, even in this country, does not allow teenagers to buy, those who are below 18, to buy cigarettes. So what is happening is that when people see, when people are exposed to tobacco smoke and when people are exposed to parents smoking, it normalizes the behavior. And so that is one way, one route that it helps to recruit young people to become smokers. So the second thing is that secondhand smoke has been found to be harmful. The chemicals from the secondhand smoke, it's been estimated to be about 4,000 chemicals in the secondhand smoke. Many people who don't smoke tend to get the diseases, tobacco-related diseases, because they are exposed to tobacco smoke. Children who are exposed to the smoke of their parents, they tend to develop asthma. They tend to develop ear infection, apart from other tobacco-related diseases. Adults are also not excluded. So with this measure in place to protect children, to protect adults, is actually, as you've rightly put it, a way of protecting the vulnerable population from being exposed to the harms caused by tobacco products.
And then to the inclusion of e-cigarettes. I mean, that one has been quite the talking point in certain quarters, because for the longest time it's been marketed as somewhat of a more safer alternative. Does this inclusion into this bill mean it's equally harmful, or it's been merely included because there are insufficient studies to prove that it's a safer alternative at this point?
I think the shortest answer to your question is that it's been included because it's a related product, not because of harm or no harm. Because the tobacco products bill in most countries, if not all, they are regulated under the tobacco products and related products, because a common substance that is a component of both cigarettes and e-cigarette is nicotine. And what has been found is that there are some exposure or some some chemicals that are produced in the tobacco smoke that are also present in the e-cigarette. So there's also been some findings showing that there's lesser quantity of some of these chemicals, but that doesn't mean that because they are lesser, then you have less harm. So we usually would say less exposure is not necessarily equal to less harm. The reason being that for some of the tobacco-related diseases, whether you are exposed at a maximum level or a low level, you are still exposed to the disease. So, but there are some other diseases that are related to smoking that would be determined by the amount of cigarettes that you smoke. So when you want to consider these two products, you have to understand that they come with sometimes some of the chemicals are less. There are some new components or new composition of the exposure to electronic cigarettes that are not there in cigarettes. For example, you would have the particles or the fumes from the e-cigarette. They have higher access or easier access to deeper parts of the body than the cigarettes. So there are some new harms that are caused by e-cigarettes that are not there with cigarettes. There are some that are caused by cigarettes that are not there in e-cigarettes. So it's not really about the harms that is determining how they are put in the law. It's because they are related in terms of their use, in terms of their components.
All right, Dr. Catherine, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Dr. Catherine Egbe. She's a specialist scientist at the Mental Health, Alcohol, Substance Use and Tobacco Research Unit of the South African Medical Research Council. And that's where I leave it for today. We're back next week. Take care.